Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Sama Elsharawy. I am a student at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm in my third year right now, and I'm studying mechanical and biomedical engineering.
How did you feel at first once you heard about COVID?
The first time I heard about COVID, it was only in China at the time. I had heard about it, and I sort of thought, well, this is pretty bad, but I was hoping that it wouldn't really reach the United States. I thought it would be more of an issue in the Eastern Hemisphere. But then eventually did, and slowly but surely the cases started rising. And it was tough, especially once we heard about quarantine having to happen and people having to social distance and locking down, and all my education went online for the semester. And so it was really shocking, right? It was just realizing that I was going to have to adjust to a new lifestyle. And sort of knowing how epidemiology works and knowing how long it takes for vaccines to be developed, I realized that this was going to be the new reality for a really long time. So I guess to answer your question, when I first heard about the disease, I was sort of I hope this isn't going to be a big deal. I hope this is just, another news headline that's scary, and then it just kind of disappears after 2 weeks. As the news kept developing, I realized this is going to be much more serious.
How has COVID affected you and your living conditions?
So the way COVID impacted my college life and my living conditions was, well, at first, college is already a place where your work life and your home life are kind of mixed together, right? You live in the same place that you're going to school, and you're already away from your family and stuff like that. And so when COVID happened, I chose to stay at my university. My university gave the option to stay for the semester, obviously with social distancing guidelines and things like that. So, but what that resulted in was basically an even greater mixing of work and home life. Not only do I live in the same general area as where I go to school, but I'm literally going to school in the same place where I eat and sleep, being my dorm. It didn't really affect my living conditions that much, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, because I was still living in the same room for the most part. However, this second semester, the one that just passed from September to December of 2020, there were a lot of greater restrictions that were placed on students. So it was only one person per room, only a maximum of 3 students could share the same bathroom fixtures, like a sink or a toilet or a shower. So we had to literally assign showers and toilets to people. But yeah, overall, just living conditions were a lot more spaced out. I wasn't really around my friends as much. Yeah, that's pretty much how it affected my college experience.
How do you feel about the government's response on COVID? Do you believe they are dealing with the situation well? Why or why not?
I think the answer to this question really depends on which state government, right? Because different states and different cities have had different responses to the pandemic. In the state, Carnegie Mellon is based in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh specifically, and obviously I'm from New York. And so both of those states and the cities in which I live in, they've been doing a good job. I think even before a single case hit Pittsburgh, they already put in social distancing guidelines. At one point they said everyone who's outside has to wear a mask. So they were dealing with it in a way that I really respected. I think they did a good job of trying to control the spread of the disease. Obviously, with the federal government, that's a different story. I think President Trump, we all know, this was all talked about during the election cycle, but he admitted that he knew about the pandemic in early January and didn't really care and didn't want to really talk about it or do anything about it because he quote-unquote didn't want to start a panic, which I think is very irresponsible. And just throughout the entire year of 2020, he's been sort of downplaying how serious it is, and the White House itself doesn't really follow any restrictions or any sort of social distancing guidelines. And when he eventually got COVID himself, instead of maybe changing his tune and saying, well, this is something that we have to take seriously now, it could happen to anybody, he just went outside without a mask and tweeted, "Don't let COVID dictate your life," or "Don't be scared of it," which is not the appropriate, responsible response from a country's leader that you would want, right? I do have hope that the upcoming administration, with the Biden administration, that they're going to take things more seriously. They did say that they're going to put in a COVID plan to help the economy, to help mitigate and control the spread of the disease, but we'll just have to wait and see about that.
What were the most difficult challenges you faced with COVID?
I think the most difficult things that I've personally experienced with COVID have been a combination of adapting to online learning and also dealing with like loneliness and things like that. You know, a lot of the social distancing requirements that have been in place since the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of those mean that I can't really go out and be with friends as much. Obviously, in college, you're living with a lot of people, right? So now I'm not living with as many people. A lot of my friends were still at home, just doing the semester remotely. And so it was really hard for me to sort of maintain any kind of like social life, right? Like that at all. So that's one aspect of it. And also, online learning, in my opinion, just became a lot harder. I think a lot of professors that I had were not really as understanding as I would like them to be. A lot of them sort of tried to just kind of, I'm just going to do what I would normally do, but I'm going to try to do it remotely, which for me, as an engineering student, I don't think that works, particularly because I'm a very hands-on kind of person. And so when you're trying to do things that are meant to be hands-on sort of remotely, I don't think it works as well. There's just a lack of that personal engagement, right? I can't walk up to a professor after lecture and say, hey, I had a question about this. I can't specifically see a problem being worked on the board. It's very difficult to sort of maintain focus and engagement when professors are behind the screen, right? And it just becomes really tiring to sit at one desk for like an entire day, going from class to class just by clicking on Zoom links. So just sort of that combined experience of trying to deal with the stress of online learning and not really having much of a social life was probably the hardest thing about this pandemic for me.